Hello. I have a favor to ask this afternoon. Help me change the world. No, really. Help me change the world. Have I got your attention? I hope so. The book that I want to share with you today ends with those last 5 words. Help me change the world. And that invitation has brought me back to this book time and time again. The book I've chosen to share with you today is The Fifth Agreement, written by the father-son duo, Don Miguel Ruiz and Don Jose Ruiz, in collaboration with Janet Mills. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. We have an audience on Facebook, Instagram, and here in the second story. And I'm so glad to have some smiling faces looking back at me as I share with you this book that I think really does have the power to help us change the world. It's good to be together each month to continue the series, Be Well Read. We can partner with Story and Song, Bookstore Bistro, and I have the opportunity to browse their health and wellness shelves and to select books to share with you and to share with those who gather. Books about wellness and wholeness. But you'll see today that I expand and I go further in that wholeness direction, looking for books that tap into our wholeness of mind, body, spirit, and emotion. So as I begin, just a word of introduction for those of you who may be new. I know there's some in the room who are new to this series. Hopefully there's some tuning in online who are also new. I'm Deborah Garrard, founder of the nonprofit wellness initiative, Be Well, Serve Well. I'm trained in mind, body, spirit eating and whole food, plant-based nutrition. And I help people navigate both the foods we eat, but also the life experiences that eat at us and wreak havoc on our health, stealing our joy and robbing us of our ability to be well and serve well. Now, there's a lot of joy in being well and serving well. There's no joy in being ill. There's also great joy in stepping into our calling, whatever it might be for each of us, to help one another change the world. We can do that. We can do that together. At Be Well, Serve Well, we seek to empower your well-being, the well-being of those who come our way, and the well-being of those who work in communities, who lead in communities. We believe that strong leaders create strong communities. I believe strong readers do too. I hope you're a strong reader. Now, Pakistani activist for female education and the youngest Nobel Prize laureate, Malala Yousafzai, said this: one book, one pen, one child, one teacher can change the world. I agree. I agree. Today, one book that I believe can help us do that, change the world. It's the Fifth Agreement. Now, a little bit about our authors. Don Miguel Ruiz, the father, is an international best-selling author of The Four Agreements, which was a New York Times bestseller for more than a decade. He's also written The Mastery of Love, The Circle of Fire and the Voice of Knowledge, and found on the shelves today, The Three Questions. That's one of his newer books. His books have been translated into 40 languages worldwide. And today he continues to share his message of ancient wisdom coupled with modern day mindfulness, offering workshops, lectures, and journeys to sacred sites around the world. His son, Don Jose, has followed in his dad's footsteps. He was apprenticed to his father, but also apprenticed to his grandmother who was a healer. In the tradition of his ancestors, he's found his passion for life in leading classes, giving lectures, and writing as he shares ancient Toltec wisdom. We'll get to that in just a minute. Now, their collaborator and co-author is Janet Mills. She's a publisher and editor who seeks to publish books of beauty, integrity, and wisdom. Her resume includes editing pretty well-known book, an international bestseller of Deepak Chopra, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. Now, what is Toltec wisdom? The Toltec culture dominated central and southern Mexico in the 10th and 12th centuries and is often credited with laying the foundation for the Aztec cultures. The ancient wisdom of Toltec culture has been described as a path that teaches us to transcend our limiting beliefs and our self-sabotaging behavior patterns so we can live a fulfilling and authentic life. This isn't a religion, but it is a way of life that embraces spirit and seeks to share the gifts of love with the world. The 5th agreement is a reflection of that desire to bring more love and authenticity into our lives and, yes, then into our world, helping us change our world, our own world, and the world that we share. The authors divide their book into 2 sections, the power of symbols and the power of doubt. First, the power of symbols. We live by agreement. It's largely the premise upon which the book's lessons are taught. And our agreements, in large part, are represented by symbols. As little children, the authors write, we're innocent. We believe what our parents or other grown-ups teach us. We agree, and the information is then stored in our memories. Everything we learn goes into our minds by agreement, and it stays with us by agreement. We agree with the symbols that we're taught. Now, we who speak English, we don't see our language as a series of symbols, though it is. It's much easier for us to see, say, the Japanese kanji as a symbol, or the strange to us, strange-looking lettering of the Russian language as symbols, rather than to see our own words as symbols. But they are, and they are by agreement. A tree is only a tree. The sun is only the sun. The earth, only the earth, by agreement. At some point, the authors posit, we begin to give meaning to the symbols beyond the mere object that they symbolize. It's here that we begin to learn to think on our own, and we use the symbols to think about things that are real and things that are not real. We take in messages through symbols, words from our culture, and we often begin to believe those messages. Messages like this: I'm not enough. I need more. I'm not successful enough, whatever that looks like. I'm smart. I'm stupid. I'm fat. I'm skinny. You can fill in the blank. I am. We choose to agree with the shoulds and the oughts that come our way in this culture. These the author describes as limiting beliefs. And from my experience, helping people navigate and heal from very real physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual illness, these limiting beliefs cause great suffering. When we internalize that word, ought, we begin to reject our true selves. We begin to care what others think, and we step into self-consciousness and self-judgment. But the symbols that we use construct what we know and what we think are only true because we say so. The authors differentiate between the object of our perception, which is the truth, and our interpretation of the truth, which is just our point of view. A tree we might call beautiful, but the tree exists irrespective of our descriptive. The truth is objective. It's what we might call science. Our interpretation of the truth is subjective, and the Toltec call this art. The authors write, all humans are artists, all of us. And they introduced an ancient concept that we hear of often in our contemporary society, virtual reality, VR. Though by it they mean something quite different than our modern use. As they describe it, we use language to create an entire virtual reality in our minds. Now, I've thought of 2 examples to share with you. First, when I say the words, The Wizard of Oz, each of us, you listening and I, we instantly imagine scenes in our head, a virtual reality that reflects the actual scenes in the movie. It might be the yellow brick road. It might be the man behind the curtain. It might be the scarecrow. It might be the Tin Man. It might be that cowardly, beautiful lion. It might be, who rang that bell? It might be those beautiful ruby slippers. We imagine that's our virtual reality. But another example that came to me as I was preparing these thoughts on Mother's Day is the entire story that a parent conjures in their head when their newly driving teenager isn't home on time. We create a story of virtual reality with symbols in our head, and we can see every tragic possibility, right? Of course, the virtual reality isn't real at all. The teenager arrives home in most cases. It's only real in our heads. Can you see how our awareness of this use of symbols can begin to help us heal? Again, from the writers, what we can do with awareness of what is truth and what is not, what is virtual, is endless. The truth leads us to self mastery, to a life that's very easy, they write. And they continue, our distortion of the truth often, I would add almost always, leads to needless conflict and human suffering. And so, as with the writings of Thich Nhat Hanh that I've shared in prior episodes of Be Well Read, awareness makes all the difference. To help us be aware, Toltec wisdom offers first 4 agreements. Those are reviewed briefly in this book, and then the 5th is introduced. I'll be brief going over the first 4 as well. The first agreement, be impeccable with your word. Can you imagine? The second agreement, don't take things personally. Do you know anyone who doesn't? The third agreement, don't make assumptions. Again, same question. Do you know anyone who doesn't? And the fourth agreement, always do your best. What a world that would be. The possibilities that these agreements offer are why I come back to these books time and time again. I hope you'll be drawn to them as well. While none of these agreements is easy, they are in truth quite simple. I won't elaborate on how the authors weave the Toltec wisdom and power of symbols to inspire their readers to accept and lean into these agreements. I want you to explore them for yourselves, of course. I believe they are powerful. I know they're powerful, profound, and if practiced, can, in truth, begin to change our world. Practice is key. In fact, one chapter is titled, Practice Makes the Master. Now, in this first section, exploring the 4 agreements, there's a brief foray beyond the power of symbols into the power of belief. The authors note this power isn't good or bad, or right or wrong. It just is in each of us. The power of our belief gives structure and form to that virtual reality we're creating as artists. And with every agreement, spoken and unspoken, the structure grows stronger and gains more power over us. Our beliefs are often rigid and often based on those limiting agreements. Now, as we move beyond the power of symbols and the belief we place in these symbols to the power of doubt, the second section of the book, we encounter 3 more intricate and meaningful concepts of Toltec wisdom: the dream of the first attention, the dream of the second attention, and the dream of the third attention. Now, these attentions are simply, first, the virtual reality we create when we first begin to agree with the world around us. Second, the recognition with doubt that maybe everything I learned is not truth. And so we seek to create a dream of second attention. And third, we come to a day when we accept ourselves just as we are, and we accept others just as they are. This is the dream of third attention. Now, the process from the first attention to the second and the third moves forward through the power of doubt. This is the second section of the book, and where we find the fifth agreement. It is with the power of doubt, the authors write, that we can challenge every message we deliver and every message that we receive. Do we agree or do we not agree with all that comes into our world, our minds, and our hearts? The fifth agreement is this: be skeptical, but learn to listen. Be skeptical, but learn to listen. To be skeptical is simply to begin to ask of all that comes your way, is it truth or is it not? Is it reality or is it someone else's virtual reality? The power of doubt takes us behind the messages, behind the symbols. We lean in and learn to listen both to what is being said and what is not being said. People share their stories with us every day. We don't need to judge their stories at all. We can learn to listen. If we've begun the self mastery of the first four agreements too, we can then agree with ourselves and others on this path of healing that the story of someone else has nothing to do with us. We make no assumptions, and we do our best to learn to listen. The authors write about respect. Respect is so important. With respect for one another and for ourselves, and with awareness of the power of the symbols we use, we no longer have anything to prove to anyone. Can you imagine? It's no longer about being right or being wrong. Again, can you imagine? When we learn to listen, we can react or not react. We can agree or disagree with what others say, and our choice depends on our awareness of the world that we want to create. We are all artists, after all. The authors say it better than I could. I'm only one half of the message, they write. You are the other half. I'm responsible for what I say. I'm not responsible for what you understand. You're the one who gives meaning to every word that you hear. End quote. We can use what we hear for good or for ill. We can use what we hear to make peace with ourselves and with others. And we can use what we hear to change the message and the messages that we in turn share with our world. If we learn to listen in this way, if we choose to be skeptical when listening to the voices of others, it's more than possible that we can be skeptical when listening to the voices we've allowed to fill our heads. Don't believe everything you hear in your own head. Can you see the implications? If the voice in our head says, I'm not good enough, we can then ask, is it really true I'm not good enough? If that voice says, I need more, I'm not successful, we can then ask, is it really true I need more? By whose standard am I not successful? A great deal of pain and suffering I witness in others is because we've not learned to doubt the voice in our heads, to be skeptical, and to ask questions of that particular voice. It's a voice that has agreed with distortions of reality, creating a virtual reality, often a virtual reality of pain, self-rejection, guilt, shame. It's a false reality. It is not truth. As the authors rightly point out, nobody judges you more than you judge yourself. It's why we seek to escape from and to avoid our own story through overeating, eating for comfort, drug and alcohol abuse, and other harmful behavior patterns that I encounter with the people who come my way seeking not only physical wellness, but wholeness of mind, body, spirit, and emotion. If we can learn to listen, to be skeptical, and to let go of all that is harmful in our use of symbols, these words that often cut like a knife, then we can step into a place of awareness that creates calm in our world, no matter what comes. In discussing the fifth agreement, to be skeptical, but learn to listen, this trio of authors states more than once that our society is ruled completely by lies. Lies we tell ourselves and lies we are told, not maliciously, mind you, by others, but unconsciously by others, by silent agreement. Rabindranath Tagore says this: it's not a sign of good health to be well adjusted to a sick society. It's not a sign of good health to be well adjusted to a sick society. It's one of the agreements that I encounter every day in my work. We've come to believe the lie that if we're diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, for example, or diabetes or cancer, we can't be fully healed. Now, are there some who will die of these diseases? Sadly, yes, of course. And yet, we've come to believe that if our gene pool has a particular disease in it, we too will eventually develop that disease. It's inevitable, it's incurable. It's not always. In our artistry, using the symbols that we've been taught, we've created a virtual reality that may or may not be fully true. Sometimes a lie is easier to believe than the truth. These are limiting agreements. To quote the authors, words spoken with authority become a powerful spell that affects other humans. Why? Because we believe those words. We become possessed by an idea, by a belief, by a story, end quote. We believe this virtual reality of which the writers speak. And again, the writers bring us back to awareness. Awareness gives us the power to step beyond the power of the symbols, using the power of doubt to come back to our authentic self. Our authentic self seeks the truth. Our authentic self seeks healing. Our authentic self has largely been silenced, but with awareness, our authentic self can be skeptical and learn to listen. As we learn to listen, we move beyond the voices in our heads. We let go of resistance and we begin to forgive ourselves and we begin to forgive others. The authors write this: forgiveness is the only way to clear our emotional body of emotional poison. The authentic self reclaims its power to create the life we truly want to live, free of the fear-based agreements that we've made our whole lives. We find it's much easier to be ourselves than to try to be what we are not. In this way, we develop faith in ourselves as we make new agreements with ourselves, choosing to be impeccable with our words, to not make assumptions, to not take things personally, and to always do our best. We learn to trust ourselves unconditionally, which the authors describe as real faith. They write of real love too, describing it as what we are born with as tiny humans. Real love is what we are. Again, I ask, can you imagine? I hope you can, and I hope your imagination inclines you to explore this little book. Page by page, the authors invite us to be fully aware and to put our faith in agreements that support life, that add to our joy, that add to our happiness and our freedom, individually and collectively. Jim Rohn is an entrepreneur, author, and motivational speaker. He says this: reading is essential for those who want to rise above the ordinary. I believe the invitation of the fifth agreement is an invitation to rise above the ordinary. Early in the book, the idea is introduced that each of us is born to deliver a message. It's a message unique to each of us. We are messengers. The book circles back to this idea in the final pages, asking this key question: what kind of message do you choose to deliver? With awareness, we can choose to deliver a message of truth rather than lies, of love rather than fear. And in these final pages, the authors ask us to make one more agreement. Help me change the world. How? First, always by changing yourself, myself first, by letting go of limiting agreements and claiming to lean into the agreements so lovingly presented in this book, the fifth agreement. There's no question this book is written from a place of love. One more excerpt. We're meant to love one another, not to hate one another. Let's stop believing that our differences make us superior or inferior to one another. Let's not believe the lies. We can return to the truth and be messengers of truth. It's no secret and truly sad that we live in such a polarized world. We now know, though, that we have the power of symbols and the power of doubt to move towards ourselves and each other in new and healing ways, to move towards the middle. In the words of Jimmy Carter, unless both sides win, no agreement can be permanent. Through the wisdom of the Toltec, both sides win, because in the middle, both sides no longer exist. Admittedly, the concepts of this book are far from easy, but they are simple and they are profound. Help me change the world. Help these writers change the world. Give your time to reading. It's an interesting, inspiring little book. It's one I believe you will read again and again. I hope so. And in so doing, we will begin to change the world together, which I believe is the only way it will ever happen. One more quote. If you've been listening along to this series for very long at all, you know I like quotes. This one from Steve Jobs, who no doubt changed our world. The ones who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. The tagline of the Fifth Agreement is simply this: a practical guide to self-mastery. With self-mastery of the symbols we use each day, with awareness as we use these symbols, we can change the world within us and then the world around us. I'm in. I'm just crazy enough to believe it's possible. And I'm hoping you are too. I hope I've given you just enough to make you want to read a little more. As always, you can find this book at Story and Song Bookstore Bistro or on their at their online bookshop. I want you to check out that online bookshop whenever you're looking for a good read, not just this book. Our independent bookstores need our support. This particular one, Story and Song Bookstore Bistro in Fernandina Beach on Amelia Island, supports our community so beautifully. I hope we'll support them too. We need each other, and I believe books can truly help us change the world. I hope you'll reach out to me too, if I can help you change your personal world in any way, stepping more fully into wellness and wholeness, perhaps stepping beyond a recent diagnosis, perhaps stepping beyond a long experienced and suffering of a chronic disease. Perhaps it's something you just want to ask me a question about. That'd be great. I would love to hear from you. We also hope that you'll follow along both Story and Song and Be Well, Serve Well on Facebook or Instagram, wherever you like to follow your social media. There's lots of healing, helpful information all the time that I'm trying to share with you, eager to share. So thank you for listening in. Thanks for seeking to be well read. And until next time, help me change the world. Be well, serve well, and I'll do the same. Thank you.